We're here with Keith to tap into his expertise in board design and how it affects the parawing riding experience.
Welcome. But in general, what I've been hearing from people and considering for parawing boards is that to maybe not go as long as in the past, maybe a little bit shorter, but still length, and a little wider than narrower.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get a little bit of stability when you're static, but that the board still moves forward really quick, and that's stable, like back and forth. So it's finding a balance for everyone, and it depends on the volume you want, the light wind or heavier winds and all that. So I don't know, that's kind of what I've been going through.
Yeah, and I do recall you mentioning our earlier conversation about a trend toward somewhat shorter, somewhat wider.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering what the anchor point for that comparison is. Comboing that comment with your comment that a lot of the feedback's coming from Elliot, and Elliot seems like he's
on the longer
right. So I'm like, shorter from his perspective or from other people?
I guess shorter from what I do on my Super K, which is my stock model.
Right.
And I've been giving that board out, the stock models that we have. We just got them and people love them. So they work extremely well for parawinging. And but now I'm getting into the little nitty-gritty details, and that's what, doing a custom board for somebody is, they're like, oh, okay, I like that, but I'd like a little more stability. So I just go maybe a little wider, and I might go a little shorter just to make it a little bit of a, a little more stable platform. But I tend not to go too short. I think too short's not the way to go. I think we've all figured that out. So I think the mid-length concept is amazing. It's just like, how much of a mid-length do you really want, or how much do you want? How less do you do? Elliot, for example, likes a little longer board and a little narrower.
Yeah.
And he's just used to that concept, and he likes it. He's tall.
Yeah.
He's 210 pounds. So he benefits, and he's good. So he likes that narrowness to just get going and be off the water as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Somebody who's maybe not as adept and as good as Elliot is would probably prefer something that's a little more stable when it's static, and that they can kind of sit there, get ready, throw the wing up, and then have some stability, and then it still moves forward relatively quick and gets off the water.
Yeah.
It's always a balance.
Yeah. So up until some of the really focused riding observations I was trying to make recently for these latest boards, I would have said, oh, stability isn't a factor for me, because every board you've made for me has been narrower and narrower, and I haven't bumped up against, oh, this feels unstable. But then I wrote
at what your width is.
But then I wrote something different, and still one of your boards, but didn't have that stability. And I'm like, it's affecting my ability to do my thing. And so while maybe by the numbers it's more efficient, I'm not able to pump. I'm focusing on keeping my balance, and so it's just a net loss in low end gain and takeoff. So what I'm wondering is, like, what's the secret, without giving away secrets, what's the secret sauce that makes a board stable? I mean, other than just looking at raw width.
Well, I think it's the width, the length combination, and how much sort of a displacement flat you have on the bottom. Those combinations are what going to create that stability. And that's kind of just what I'm going through, is getting to those little details. I mean, I'm trying to make a board in comparison to last year's Super K and all the custom stuff that I'm doing that gets that stability for people that they need, when you're just sitting there and trying to get ready to go and you're on your knees or however you get up. And then translate into something that moves forward really quick, and then gets that stability, and that you can stand up on and, be going and then pop off the water. So it's really just working with those displacement flat on the bottom, some double concaves. The rocker, the entry rocker is really important. The volume in the nose, the volume in the tail, just the balance, I think I found, is more important than we ever thought. And then I think too, once you're up and riding, it's so important to have a board that's easy to pump, or when you're trying to get up, that has a good balance in pumping, because you are sort of trying to get something that you can kind of pump with the parawing to like kind of push and get up. So every little bit's so critical.
Yeah. A week and a half ago, whatever, over a weekend, observing parawing use in super light wind. And there was a crew of people out there from 4 to 6 meter parawings.
Yeah.
And in broad strokes, the 4-meter guys were getting up quicker. The 6-meter guys are out there sunk up to their knees and like no chance of even going. And the 4-meter guys on good size, like 120-liter proper full length downward, I'm just pumping them their way up. And once you've cleared the water, they're riding around all happy.
Yeah, that's, I think what you need to do is, like, if you're in light winds, you're not trying to go. I would think in general, sure, you can go to a bigger parawing, but with your small board, but you're going to struggle. So I think you really need the volume and the not too wide and the longer, like a downwind board that can, you know, glide forward. Because in general, when it's lighter too, it's not so chopped up the water, so you're not struggling with that, you know, lateral stability or like stationary stability. You're more worried about the board getting going as quick as possible and as efficient as possible, so you're off the water. And then once you're up, you're flying.
Yeah.
So I would think you would want a bigger board in light winds and a smaller parawing.
Yes.
You
that's,
know,
that's true.
That
and
to me seems
skills,
more fun.
And the skills to do it.
And the skills to do it.
And it seems like it's the winds below 14, 15 miles an hour.
100%.
Where it's like all comes down to board and rider skill.
100%.
And
having a bigger wing, I don't think is going to help you. Maybe a little bit, but not much. I think it's your skills and the board that are going to get you up.
And so that's its own thing. It's kind of pretty easy for me to put my finger on and talk to people about.
Yeah.
Being on Maui here, oftentimes riding in conditions where we could choose a parawing size to have plenty of power. So 100%. We could choose whatever board we want.
Yeah.
Riding power level. So then now it's not a requirement for the wind conditions. It comes down to a personal preference. And for me, like the sweet spot of mid-length boards you've been making for me feels like a great balance of I could ride a bigger parawing.
Like 89 liters. Okay.
Totally. I could ride a smaller board if I wanted to ride more powered up, but I don't. I want it to feel really light and nice, and my fingers quick and easy to put away. And so like that's just such a good sweet spot. And I think people coming from downwind paddling totally get it and can make those choices.
Yes.
The real place where I feel like there's an opportunity to communicate information is people coming from inflatable wings.
Yes.
Because their mindset, like to take an extreme example, somebody who's like, oh, I ride my, what size power wing should I get? Well, so I'm like, okay, as a starting point, what size inflatable wing do you have?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a 5.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, great. So you're riding in 15 miles an hour wind? Oh, no, I ride that all the way up to 30. I'm like,
whoa, okay.
Right. I'm not going to fly a 5-meter power wing up to 30. So let's talk about that, make sure expectations are real. At any rate, oftentimes they're using the board they use for winging.
Yep.
So
and that's the good thing, because that's what I do when someone comes in. It's like, okay, what are you riding for a board?
Yep.
In general, I go to the board, not the wing. You can relate more to the wing. I relate more to the board.
Sure.
In relation to being on a wing.
Right.
So like, they're like, oh, well, I use a 60-liter board. And I'm like, okay, so what are you looking to do? Are you learning? Are you, asking these questions? And in general, I volume up, because I think you can just benefit from it. And the newer designs that we're doing are so efficient in the air that what we're finding is that more volume is actually better, and you can get away with it. So volume is your friend, 100%. So for me, I've gone parawinging a couple times, and so I think the first time I'm going to do it, maybe I'll borrow Elliot's board that's 100 liters just to get it down. But then I'm thinking I'll probably be on something like a 70, because I want to get up, turn downwind, put the wing in my hand, and just go downwind and have a sensitivity.
Yeah.
So asking the level, where they're parawinging, what they were on from a winging standpoint, really helps me kind of cater into what they need.
Yeah. I think you touched on something there that I want to circle back to, which is you're maybe sizing them up.
Yeah.
And yet you said there's something about the new design, which I'm guessing is that even in a bigger board, it's going to feel small and responsive like an earlier design, smaller board?
No, I'd say, again, I'm going to compare it to my stock models last year. It's going to, but yeah, it'll feel like a smaller board in that how it reacts in the air, not the length, and again, mid-lengths, you're standing more in the middle of the board. So you're not having this short feel to the board. I mean, it's feeling short because you are in the middle, but you've got the nose and the tail that are affecting the foil and that standing in the middle and that length is only helping you to get up.
Yeah.
You know, being able to teeter totter a little bit, push forward and back,
Yeah.
and not push forward and go underwater because the thing is short.
Right.
So
those conversations you're having, are they people that are riding inflatable wings that got a board from you last year and they're considering a new board for inflatable
well,
wings?
a lot of times they want to do both.
Uh-huh.
And so, and a lot of times I tell them, well, you can do both, but I would definitely go up in volume if you're going to do both.
Yeah.
Because I think you can benefit with the extra volume when you're parawing.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets in your way
Yeah.
at all. And it only helps you.
Yeah.
You know, then there's other extremes that people want something small, and that's
Right.
fine, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But in general, I would say I'm in anywhere from like 65 to about 100 liters. That's kind of where I've been making most of the parawing boards.
Okay.
And I think that that's a good balance between having something that's going to be stable enough and something small enough or big enough, depending on, you know, where they're riding, what they want to do.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that perfectly resonates with me. I
Yeah.
completely agree. That matches my personal experience. How does that compare to what somebody might have come to you with for your previous generation of boards, say a year ago,
Yeah.
only for inflatable wings? What was the average?
I would
size
say it
board
would
there?
probably be more like from 50 to 75.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, that's more, it's like lower.
Yeah.
Because in general, people like anything after 75, 80, it's just too much board for the winging. You just
Yeah.
don't need it.
Yeah.
So
in the inflatable wings, being shorter, being lower volume, if that's accurate. For what
in
you
general,
said.
just more lower volume.
Lower volume.
Yeah.
My sense is that it was something about the inflatable wing that just required less from the board and the foil and the rider's technique.
100%, because the wing is kind of lifting you a little bit, so you're
Mhm.
not putting as much pressure on the board.
Mhm.
The same having more length and a little narrower definitely benefits parawing even more. It would benefit winging as well, I think, finding that balance, because you still have that teeter totter, and it's just going to make it quicker to get off the water, even for winging.
Yeah.
So even with the winging, I was kind of going that way, but then I realized with the parawinging, you need it even more.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't have this wing that's kind of lifting you as much. It's pulling you along. You can't. I mean, yes, it's getting better, and you can pump them a bit now, but still, the better the board can do that teeter tottering and support you, and have somewhat of a stability and an ease of kind of going like this, the easier it's going to be for you to like kind of manipulate it to help you get up.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that the wing boards. If I heard you right, the boards for inflatable wings were already, some segment of that was already headed that way.
Yes, 100%.
And so, is that pulling from the downwind paddling?
100%.
Uh-huh.
So I think, we were doing all these downwind boards for the last 3 years, 4 years, and then we realized the benefits of the length and of that you're actually standing in the middle, and that the length and the narrowness gets the board up off the water the most efficiently. And also pumping, I feel like is a more balanced thing. And also the way it affects the foil. So we're just like, well, why can't you bring this into the winging segment? Because there's no real negatives unless you're in, I don't know, on the extreme sides of things. So we brought this into the mid-length concept for winging, and it worked extremely well. Really efficient, easy to get up. Some people don't like the length, but that I think you get used to, and you can kind of like play with that, maybe a little short, a little wider again. But they're just so much more efficient and more fun to ride. And the new boards, that are coming out fly through the air so well that you don't feel the length and the volume as much.
I think you just touched on what was the next question in my head, which is, like we discussed earlier, for parawing riding below 15, 14 miles an hour, something like that, the full-on downwind boards just seem like the absolute best tool for that job.
100%. I think the downwind boards for that light wind segment are the board.
Right. So then the question was going to be, why mid-length? And where did that even come from? It seems like a fairly new category. I
mean, it's been 2 years now. 2 years that we've been doing that, and I think what it allows is you can get more stability in the board than the downwind boards. because downwind boards stay in like between 17 to like 19 and a half in width, and they have length. So, and in general, you're doing a bottom that's even more efficient to get off the water.
Right.
So you're trying to get something that you can paddle up and get off the water as quick and as easy as possible. But in general, they're less stable than a mid-length. So the mid-length really hits that, winging, a little more stability, parawinging, more stability.
Yeah.
That is nice when you're static.
Yeah.
So because you're not having this paddle to stand and push yourself and start getting that stability.
Yeah.
So the downwind boards do hit a spot when it's super light and you're have a little bit more level, because they are a little more unstable, but they are super efficient.
Right.
So any energy that you start putting into it, you're going to move forward, and then the stability comes, and then it's a matter of getting up. But it is something that I think you need a little bit more level to have, and especially because it's light wind and you're trying to harness any energy that's there, and there's a lot going on. So the mid-length, I think we go all the way up to 120 liters in our stock boards, and those boards I think will offer you more stability for those light winds. So it's a good combination between both.
Yeah. So I think you've said all this already, but just for clear takeaways from me, like those full-on downwind boards, awesome tool for super light wind. But as you said earlier, like the water's flatter and nicer in that light wind. So a less stable board is still a win for that condition, but it gets a little bit windier, the water gets choppier, and to still be operating well.
Yeah, but I think too, if you're to look at our Super K or anything custom that I do, if somebody wants a light wind parawing board, I wouldn't make them a downwind board. I would make them something that's like I just made Elliot, 6'10", 19 and a half, a little more width, more like our surf downwind model. Or I would make something, if they're just parawinging, more like that. I would take all the concepts from the downwind board and put it into a parawing board, meaning it wouldn't be as long, let's say, as the downwind, and it's not going to be quite as narrow, but it's going to have all the goodness of that, getting up quick. I would put maybe a little bit more flat. So there is a parawing light wind board that would be epic as well. And I do make those. Right. And the Super K, we go all the way to 120 liters. Yeah. So that's a great super light wind board as well. So as we get into the parawing, I think there are boards that are going to be more parawing specific in the light wind as well, that will get the stability that is so key, and yet the efficiency. Yeah. So I am working towards that.
You used the word surf downwind?
I do in our downwind range. We have the crossing, which is kind of the race board that's longer and narrower. Then we have the Dragonfly 3, which is kind of a mix between a short and a longer one. So it kind of does both. And then I have the surf, which are our shorter lengths and a little bit more width in downwinding. Something for short period swell like the gorge. Okay. Or like really good days at Kihei.
So you're riding in surfing style.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So it's just a shorter, little wider concept, a little more stable. Nice. Because you are shorter. Those will work really well in light wind parawinging.
They sound like.
But if somebody were to come to me to make something, I would make something a little different than that.
Right.
Awesome. So yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. That was awesome. Thanks. Yeah.